الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله أما بعد قال الله في محكم كتابه الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا أقيموا بالصلاة آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. Respected brothers in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
As I'm sure you all know, in Islam we have a system which is called an ajr system, by which if we do a good deed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to reward us by doing this good deed. If we do a bad deed, it's going to be recorded. We've done a sin. It's going to be recorded. Allah is going to actually tell us that this is the bad deed that we've done. And to oversimplify it even more, you can compare it to like a league system. In the Premier League, you have, a team wins the match, it's going to go up to the top of the table. It loses the match, it goes to the bottom of the table. So the more good deeds that we do, the higher we are going to get, the closer we are going to get towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more likely we are going to get into heaven. The more sins that we do, the more likely we are to go to the bottom of the table. Or in other words, to go towards hellfire. Now the quickest way, and the best way in which we can reach this high amount of ajr, the quickest way we can actually get towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to get into heaven, is by salah. And we have numerous ahadith which tell us how important salah is, and why we should uphold our salah. But we have to look no further than the adhan and the iqamah to realize the actual importance of salah. What do we say in the salah? In the adhan and iqamah we say, Hayya ala khayril amal. Come to the greatest of deeds. The greatest of deeds. Now we know that one of the companions of the Prophet actually removed this from the adhan when he was in charge, in power. And the reason he actually removed this was because he wanted people to not actually believe that salah is the greatest of deeds. He wanted them to believe that it was actually jihad was the greatest of deeds. So that he could actually go on to call people to actually come and fight with him, so he can go and attack various people as easily as you want. And as a compromise, he then added Salatul Khayr min al-Nawm to the Fajr adhan. But that is just showing us how important it is for salah, for us to actually uphold salah. And when we hear these stories of people removing Hayya ala Khayr Amal from adhan, it's not hard for us to realize that when the Prophet is praying Salatul Jum'ah, he had 12,000, according to Sahih Bukhari, he had 12,000 people behind him. How hard is it to believe that all of them ran away when the trader came, and only 12 people were remaining behind the Prophet? How hard is it to believe that? And then how hard is it to believe that all the companions who were there at Ghadir Khum are going to abandon Imam Ali alayhi salam, after they abandoned the Prophet whilst he was doing his salah? Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He numerously reminds us, Aqimus salat, Aqimus salat, Aqimus salat. I think it's 99 times it's mentioned in the Quran, salah, showing us how important it actually is, why we must actually be praying. Imam Ali alayhi salam tells us in one hadith that if man knows of the thawab and the rewards that he is getting whilst he is in a position of sujood, he will never raise his head from that position. This position, whilst we are in our lowest position, all our, as many of our body features on the floor as possible, Imam Ali has said that if we knew how many rewards we were getting, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you would never raise your head. When a man looks at a man in this position of sujood, he sees him in his lowest position. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at a man in sujood, he sees that as his greatest position. He has actually reached the spiritual ascension and understood what the Prophet says when he says, As-salatu mi'raj al-mu'min. The prayer is the ascension of the true believer. Now we see that there are all these different rewards. One of them, a hadith narrated by the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, tells us that if we pray a good prayer, for example, Salatul Fajr, we pray it well, and then we also pray Salatul Dhuhr well, the sins that we committed between these two prayers, the minor sins that we committed between these two prayers will be forgiven. This isn't just it's not just as easy as that. The reason the Prophet says this is because he has realized that once you have gained this amount of, once you have taken control of your salah, and once you are doing your salah well, you actually realize this humility. You will have humbleness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will then begin to forgive you because of this, because it's so important for us to have taqwa, so important for us to have piety. Just like there are numerous rewards for somebody who prays well, there are also very bad punishment, very bad punishment for those who don't actually look after their prayer as well. In fact, Fatima Zahra alayhi salam asked the Prophet once, she asked him, what happens to those who neglect their prayers? Now first listen to the word here. She said, neglect their prayers. Not someone who leaves their prayers, someone who neglects their prayers. So they might be praying, but they might be praying fast. They might be praying, or they might be, watching the TV, and they've got the football match, and they're keeping track of the score with one eye. She said, neglect their prayers. That's how important salah is. He said, there are 15 punishments for this person. She said, oh Rasulullah, what are these punishments? He said, there are 6 in dunya, 3 on the deathbed, 3 in the grave, and 3 in akhirah. 2 in akhirah. She said, what are these 6 in dunya? He said, one of them is the light, the nur from one's face is removed. The sincerity from the face is removed. That person will have the barakah removed from his life. He will die young. He will also not have the rizq. He won't be gaining money throughout his life, as much money as possible. That person will also have all his du'as not replied. And also the du'as of other people who have prayed for him are also not replied. Showing us how important salah is in this life as well. And then she asked, what about the punishments on the deathbed? He said, these punishments include, the person will be dying thirsty. He will die so thirsty that if all the rivers and all the water in the whole world were given to him, that person would still be thirsty. He would also be dying hungry. So even if he's eating a lot, he would also be dying hungry. Showing us again how important salah is. She asked him more about the punishment in the grave. He said, well, the grave will become very compact. It will be very cramped to that person. He'll be suffering severe pain. If not that for the 2 hands isn't enough for us, it's going to be even more compressed for those who neglect their prayers. Also, there will be an angel put into the grave who's going to ask you the most severe of questions. Why did you forget your prayer? Why did you leave your prayer? Why did you pray late? Why were you not concentrating on your prayer? Showing us again this importance of our prayer in our daily lives. Also, when we continue, she asked him, what about the punishments in the akhirah? Rasulullah said, if he even reaches akhirah, firstly, if he reaches akhirah, this person will be dragged in front of all the believers, in front of all the believers and the mu'mins, and he will be humiliated. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be telling him, this is the person who neglected their prayers. Now, if it's between me and you, just to get away from those punishments, let's try to uphold our prayers. That's the first stage. The second stage is to actually do our prayers, not to see it as a burden, but to see it as something good. Now, in fact, there's another hadith by Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which tells us that even if we delay our prayers, we're going to be punished for that. So much so that there will be a person in the whole queue of all the mu'mins going to heaven. This person will be dragged out of the queue. He will be seeing all the mu'mins going inside heaven, and that person will be staying there alongside the angel that drags him out. Everybody's gone in, and you can imagine how many people will be going into heaven. Now this one person is going to be standing there saying, look, what have I done? Why are you leaving me out here? He said, just as you delayed your prayers, you're going to be delayed going into heaven. Look at how important salah is for us. We must try not to delay it. When we look at Imam Hussein alayhi salam on the plains of Karbala, he was in a battle, in the middle of a battle, and it would be understandable if he couldn't pray. Arrows were being shot at him, yet he still decided to pray his Salat al-Dhuhr. He had to have 2 of his companions act as bodyguards for him, so that the arrows wouldn't hit him. As soon as Imam Hussein finished his prayer, these 2 companions of his fell down with arrows throughout their body. This is how important he had seen his salah. He didn't want to delay it any second, he didn't want to delay it any minute. He wanted to pray it on time. Now we take these imams as our own role models. We take the prophets as our role models. So we see how they treated salah. We see what they done with their salah. Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to be in sujood, and people used to throw rubbish over him. But showing how concentrated he is in salah, showing how important he saw salah is, and how patient he was, he used to ignore this fact. He didn't even realize that people were throwing rubbish over him. He used to continue praying. Not just Nabi Muhammad. We see Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salam. A grown man walks in front of him and he didn't even notice. A grown man walked in front of Imam Musa al-Kadhim and he didn't even notice, showing us how concentrated he was, how he had reached the next level, how he descended towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we also see Imam Ali alayhi salam, who was in a battle and an arrow was shot into his foot. Everybody tried to pull this arrow out. Nobody could achieve it. They kept on pulling and pulling, nothing would happen. So they went to the Prophet and said, Ya Rasulullah, you know, Imam Ali has his arrow in his foot, how can we get it out? He said, do it whilst he's praying. So he went into so when they saw Imam Ali alayhi salam's prayer, they pulled the arrow out and it was as easy as that. And then after Imam Ali finished the prayer, he saw a patch of blood on the floor. And he said, where did this blood come from? Showing us that he hadn't even realized that the arrow was pulled out whilst he was praying, because he was so close towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, you have some people that say, you know, this story isn't true. How can it be? You know, he's praying, it's pain and everything. Of course you realize it. But we just look in Surah Yusuf. When those women cut their fingers off for the love of a man, can we not believe that Imam Ali had an arrow pulled out for the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Showing us how important they had realized Allah and how they had reached this spiritual ascension. We also see that Imam Ali alayhi salam had his two greatest achievements whilst he was in his prayer. His two greatest achievements. The first one, Surah 5 verse 55. He was in his ruku'. An old man came in and he was asking for charity. A poor man asking for charity. Nobody would give him his charity. So what does Imam Ali do? He sticks his hand out and he gives away his ring whilst he is in ruku'. In fact, some people say that that ayah doesn't apply to Imam Ali. They translate it as being those who uphold their prayers, who pay the poor rate, and who do ruku'. However, if we analyze the ayah properly, we see that ruku' is part of salah. Why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be repeating this again at the end of the ayah? It must be that he is giving ruku' whilst he's giving zakat whilst he is in ruku', to show us the true meaning of the ayah. And we understand that Imam Ali's second greatest achievement was achieving martyrdom in the Masjid Kufa whilst he was in sujood. Ibn Muljim came in, as we all know the story, he struck Imam Ali and the poison went into Imam Ali's body, which caused Imam Ali's death. Now we have traditions which say that had Imam Ali alayhi salam not been struck in that same place in Khaybar, then he wouldn't have, the actual sword wouldn't have actually pierced his body and he would have been fine. But it was only because he had been struck before in the same place in Khaybar that this happened. Because Ibn Muljim said that his strike was enough to kill 10 people, to put 10 grown men, to kill 10 grown men. Showing us how strong Imam Ali alayhi salam also was. And we also look at Fatima Zahra alayhi salam in her prayer, when she used to do all the mustahabbat. She used to make sure that she would prolong her sujood, like we said that we must be doing in all our salat. She made sure that she would be reading qunut in the second rak'ah. She made sure she was reading dua in the last rak'ah, in the last rak'ah and sujood. She also, and we've actually called it after, named it after her, Fatima Zahra. She made it famous. She used to do tasbih every time, after every single prayer, showing us how important this is to her. Showing us how important her love towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And these are our role models. We must take on to them. Imam Al alayhi salam was one day in a mosque with his son Imam Muhammad Al Baqer alayhi salam, who was still very young, about 5, 6, 7 years of age. And he saw that his father was crying, and his father was red, and he looked faint, and his knees were red, and his arms were red, all because of how much prostration he was doing towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how much worship he was doing. Imam Al Baqer said to his father, Imam Twaij, he said, look, you know, you don't need to do so much. Why are you going through this pain? He said, no matter how much salah I do, no matter how much worship I do, I will never reach the level that my grandfather, Imam Ali alayhi salam, done in his salah towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Showing that Imam Ali had actually done so much salah and so much mustahabbat and so much worship towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is how important salah is for all of us. So we must actually take lessons from these imams. And not only should we be learning salah or worshiping salah, doing as much as we can, we should also actually understand all the fiqh issues. You know, if for example, you're praying jama'ah, when are you allowed to join? Are you allowed to join whenever, or is it before ruku'? All these different things we must have our answers to. Because Imam Hassan and Hussein, in their youth, they had perfected their whole religion such that they were teaching grown men how to pray. They were by a well one time and they saw a man doing wudu incorrectly. So Imam Hassan and Hussein, you know, upholding the idea of teaching people how to do good, they said, you know, let's come up with a plan. One of us will do it incorrectly, one of us will do it incorrectly. So they said, no problem. Because they didn't want to embarrass the man. You can imagine, you know, an old man and you have two kids teaching him how to pray. It's a bit embarrassing for the man in front of all his friends. So this man was doing wudu and they asked him, look, can you tell us which is doing wudu correctly? So one of them done it correctly, one of them done it incorrectly. And then the man saw the correct version and he realized, this is where I've been going wrong. This is how I should actually be doing prayer. And he thanked them for teaching him how to do wudu. Now we must realize, once we understand salah, once we have reached this position of humility and taqwa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will then, from then, give us knowledge. Will give us ilm. He'll give us iman. We'll begin to understand all these different things, which we see Imam Muhammad Baqer alayhi salam had reached this level. And we are commemorating his martyrdom today. Imam Al Baqer had a Christian come up to him, who Christians for the past hundreds of years, they had questions which they had unanswered. So they went to Imam Muhammad Baqer and he said, you say that once you are in heaven, you will be eating, but nothing will leave your body, you won't be excreting. He said, yeah, what's wrong with that? He said, how can this be? He said, well, imagine a fetus. It is inside the mother's womb. It is gaining nutrients, but it's not excreting anything. True? The man has another question. He said that you say people will be gaining sustenance in heaven, but nothing will decrease. He said, yeah, what's wrong with that? He said, imagine a candle. If you have a candle and it's fire, you light another candle and another candle, another candle. However many candles you have, that first candle you had wouldn't lose its flame. True? Showing us this knowledge that he'd reached in his age. Now the Khalifa of the time realized this knowledge that he had and how he was converting so many people, that he threw him into prison, saying, you know, we don't want any more people to be converted. So whilst he was in prison, he was also talking to the prison mates, and these people began converting. They began reaching Islam. He had such an influence on these people that the Khalifa of the time then said, look, there's nothing we can do. And he asked the governor of Medina, Walid, to actually poison Imam Muhammad Baqer alayhi salam. Now the poison began flowing through the bodies of Imam Muhammad Baqer alayhi salam, and he began falling in and out of consciousness. Imam Muhammad Baqer alayhi salam had the chance to tell his son, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, his wasiyyah. And slowly but surely, Imam Muhammad Baqer alayhi salam passed away. Imam Muhammad Baqer alayhi salam was then buried in Medina in Jannat Al Baqer by his son Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. But however, when we realize that Imam Muhammad Baqer had the chance to be buried by his son, we have to see what happened to Muslim ibn Aqeel in Kufa. And you will understand that he didn't have his son burying him. He had Umar ibn Sa'ad, an enemy of the Ahlul Bayt, the person who led the war. Muslim ibn Aqeel was used as a messenger, as a scout for Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein asked him to go towards Kufa to try and find out what happened in Kufa, to see if the people are loyal. As Muslim ibn Aqeel entered Kufa, he had 18,000 people, and some say 40,000 people, pledged their allegiance towards Imam Hussein. They pledged their allegiance towards Imam Hussein such that Muslim ibn Aqeel replied to Imam Hussein saying, come to Kufa, everybody will stay with you. So once as soon as Yazid found out about this, that these 40,000 people had pledged their allegiance towards Imam Hussein, he said, we cannot have this. Now the governor in Kufa was a weak man. He was weak. He wasn't able to fight. So he decided to get his governor from Basra, Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, who was a fierce governor. Now we have traditions which say that Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, as he was going to Kufa, he dressed up as Imam Hussein to try and fool the people of Kufa so that they allow him into the city. So he went towards the governor of Basra, the governor of Kufa, and he told him the story. He said, Yazid told me that I'm going to take over the city. And then now that he's taken over the city, he began telling people that do not fight in this fight of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. It's between Yazid and Hussein. There are 5 points in this city which you can stay under and you will be saved. He also offered people money. Just like the Prophet had his companions praying behind him and they fled him. Muslim ibn Aqeel was in the plains of Kufa. He had 40,000 people behind him and they all left Muslim ibn Aqeel. 40,000 people, and he turned around and he was walking alone. He started walking in the plains of Kufa, in the city of Kufa. He had nowhere to go. He didn't know where to go. He was alone. He had no family. He had no friends. He was walking alone in the plains of Kufa. He was walking up and down, and then he realized what had happened. He realized that he must reply to Imam Hussein, tell him not to come towards Kufa. He began to leave the city. This is when he felt thirsty. This is when he went towards the house. He went towards any house and he knocked on the door. An old lady, her name was Tawaj, she came out. She said, "Is there anything I can do to help you? Can I help you? Is there anything you need?" He said, "Yes, please, can you just get me one glass of water? This is all I need." The lady went back inside the house, and her daughter was still waiting outside. As the lady Tawaj came back outside, she saw her daughter crying. She said, "Why are you crying? Has this man hurt you? Has he done anything to you?" She said, "No, this man hasn't done anything to me. He just told me who he was and what had happened to him. She told me that he is alone and he has nowhere to go. He said that he is the messenger of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and he is in the plains of Kufa and he has nowhere to go." As soon as Tawaj heard this, she said, come inside the house. Come quickly inside the house. I'll leave a space for you to stay in." So Muslim ibn Aqeel was taken inside the house, and he was given a small area to stay in. He fell asleep for a few minutes and woke up straight away. And he spent the whole day in his salah, showing how important he realized what worship was. Now, Tawaj came back and she said, "Look, how come you're not sleeping?" He said, "Well, as I went to sleep, I saw in my dream Amir al-Mu'mineen came to me. He said that, 'Please come to us quickly. You will be coming to us soon.'" So Muslim ibn Aqeel realized that these were the last minutes he would be spending in this life. He realized that he must be trying to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He didn't want to be spending the last minutes sleeping. So he would worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala constantly. Now Tawaj's son, who was blinded by the reward, noticed that Muslim ibn Aqeel was staying in his own house, and he went to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, and he told Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad that Muslim ibn Aqeel was in his house. So Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad sent an army of 300 towards Muslim ibn Aqeel's house. Muslim ibn Aqeel went outside and he began to fight these people. After he heard the footsteps, he fought them bravely. They all ran away. Muslim ibn Aqeel they ran back and they came with reinforcements the second time. Muslim ibn Aqeel then continued to fight. They ran away. And they went to Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad and he said, "Look, send us more reinforcements." He said, "This is one man. You are 300. How come he is fighting over you?" He said, "This is the nephew of Imam Ali alayhi salam. This is the nephew of the man that killed 35 out of 70 in Ma'rakat Badr. Surely he's going to be able to fight." They began to fight with Muslim ibn Aqeel until so many soldiers of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad were there that they took Muslim ibn Aqeel and they dragged him towards Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad's palace. Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad then offered Muslim ibn Aqeel the chance to join his army. He said, "You join my army, join my side." Muslim ibn Aqeel said, "No, but all I ask for you is for a cup of water." He said, "Please give me a cup of water so that I can drink." So he began to drink the cup of water when he realized that there was so much blood in this cup of water that he couldn't actually do anything. The cup was filled with water. He said, "Please refill it." They refilled it. And he saw the cup was then again filled with water. He said, "Refill it again." And then again the cup was filled with water. He said, "That's it. I have realized the destiny of the Ahlul Bayt. The destiny of the Ahlul Bayt is to all die thirsty." He noticed that every member of the army at that time was going to die thirsty. All the companions of Imam Hussein. Muslim ibn Aqeel was then dragged towards the top of the clock tower. And they said towards Muslim ibn Aqeel, "Please stick your head out so that we can behead you." He said, "No, if you want to kill me, you're going to have to fight me." So they began fighting Muslim ibn Aqeel. As the executioner came to kill Muslim ibn Aqeel, he saw him crying. He says, "Why do you cry?" He says, "I cry not for myself, I cry for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, who's coming towards Kufa thinking that he's going to have 40,000 people with him." He was crying on the clock tower when he saw Umar ibn Sa'ad, the person who was the closest of his family members. He said, "I have 3 things for you to do. I'm going to give you my will because there's nobody else I can give my will to. Number 1, I have 700 dirhams which I have taken a loan from. Please take some money from here and return this money." He also said, "Please, I want you to bury me. After I die, I want you to wash me, dig me a little hole so that you can bury me. And number 3, get a message towards Imam Hussein, tell him not to come towards Kufa because he's going to be alone and everyone's going to abandon him." So they began fighting Muslim ibn Aqeel, and they began fighting so much until he died. They chopped off his head and they threw him over the clock tower. They tied his feet with a rope and they dragged him along the streets of Kufa. Imagine the scene. At this point, Imam Hussein alayhi salam called Ibn Fadl al-Abbas towards him. He would look sad and he said, "What's wrong?" He said, "Look between my 2 fingers." He lifted his 2 fingers. He said, what do you see?" He looked through his 2 fingers and he saw Muslim ibn Aqeel falling. He saw Muslim ibn Aqeel falling and he said, "This is Muslim ibn Aqeel, do something to help him." He said, "There is nothing we can do to help him. We cannot do anything anymore." Imam Hussein alayhi salam at this point went towards Hamida the daughter of Muslim ibn Aqeel, he went towards Hamida and he began patting her on the head. He began patting her on the head and trying to comfort her. She said, "Oh, Imam Hussein, why are you doing this to me? Why are you treating me like you are treating the orphans? What has happened to Muslim ibn Aqeel? Has something happened to him? Has he passed away? Has he died?" Imam Hussein alayhi salam at this point couldn't handle it. He started crying so much that he ran away, that he had to leave her. Sukaina came towards Hamida and she began comforting her. What did she say? She said that no orphan child can be left alone. Imagine this. Imagine on the 11th of Muharram what happened to Sukaina. She was an orphan child. Wasn't she alone while she was running between all the tents? Wasn't she alone when she had nowhere to go, no one to help her, no one besides her? Sukaina was running and running and running until a man went up to her. He went up to her and he liked the earrings that she had on her ears. And he ripped the earrings off her ears. Blood was dripping from her. This man then went to walk back to his house and he put the earrings behind the head, behind the pillow. And then he also went towards one of the pillars which had Imam Hussein alayhi salam's head on it. He took this pillar, he took the head and he also put this into a bowl. Now this man's wife had a dream at that same time. She had a dream that Fatima Zahra alayhi salam came towards Muslim ibn Aqeel, towards her, and she said, what has your husband done? He has stolen the earrings of my granddaughter. You cannot stay with him. So she left that man straight away. And Sukaina was still left remaining, running up and down in the tents all alone. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون وأقول قولي هذا وصلى الله على محمد وعلى الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد.